presented by Dano's Seasoning. Yum yum, get you some.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Dominick TJ. We also have co-host TJ Corman, who unfortunately, TJ is feeling a little bit under the weather tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah, man, going through it a little bit. If I sound nasally or if you see me drink a little more water than usual, guys, that's the reason why. But we're gonna try to power through this thing and stick it out and give you guys what you came for.
There we go. That's what we like to hear. We knew that the former wide receiver would come through and not be a diva. Is that?
I saw your text. I won't repeat to the general public what was said, but just say I'm just so you
Yeah.
know he asked me to man up.
Yeah. It was that's a premium subscription. You get to access to those
Right,
conversations in
yeah.
the background.
That's the
We are,
HBO version.
yeah, exactly. We are presented by the Dogs Media Network, part of College Football Dogs, to supply you with some of your college football needs throughout the season. Again, comment throughout the show whether your team's doing well, not doing well, happy, sad, mad, frustrated, pissed off, whatever the case may be. Let us know as we go through. We'll try and share those along the way. Have a good time as we go down tonight. We're also presented by Dano's Seasoning. Down below, TJ, I tried the Chipotle on something new, which was
Okay.
chicken pot pie.
Nice.
Yeah, and the Chipotle, man, perfect. It went well, very well with it. So there's another option that I hadn't previously thought about, but we had the other night, and
First of all, I do love a pot pie.
I know, right? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Oh man. So getting into last week, I guess really on last week's episode, we already covered Coastal Carolina versus App State. So we will skip that game, even though that was in the games of coverage from last week. We will jump into some of the other games. But first, as we usually do, we will have TJ kind of help us break down some clips here. And we'll start off with this first one as Georgia Southern was playing James Madison this weekend. And as we know now,
Yeah.
didn't go so well for Georgia Southern in this one.
Yeah, James Madison is just tough, man. They are really a tough group. They play well. They're sound at all three levels. This play, however, you've got a receiver coming across in motion, but then he runs a backside post pattern. It looks initially to me, and maybe we got this from a different angle, I'm not sure, but it looks to me initially like he's beat the corner, right? And it's a bad throw by our quarterback here. Bren does not put it on him. You put that ball out in front of him, you're striking the band up. But you get here, inside release, corners playing outside leverage. He's already given them the inside go here, and the ball is. He's beat by 2 steps. Yeah, and this is the part that pisses me off. 23, you didn't make a play, okay? You did not make a play as a receiver, okay? That just rubs me wrong entirely. Don't get up act like you did something great when it was a bad throw. But that's a personal thing. I've got some DB friends that that say they have to celebrate it regardless. But no, like I said, if he leads him to the middle of the field or to the pylon, like I said, they're making reservations for 6. But great route, great play design, especially motion that side coming back across his face. But Bren needs to put that ball out there on and let him run under it.
Yeah, and quickly, as I had mentioned that we would talk about too, ultimately it probably doesn't change a massive outcome on the game. But do you think that going into halftime, it possibly being 17-7 changes the rest of the game a little bit? I mean, as you said, JMU was pretty dominant all the way around anyways, but what are your thoughts as a former player who has more insight onto maybe what that could have done psychologically into both teams' heads, really?
Yeah, so for me, I think it definitely kind of messes with the momentum, right? Going into a half or going into any game really like that. When you have a chance to score and you don't, it does something negative to the morale, right? And I remember back when we were playing against Kansas my freshman year, we fumbled going into the end zone on the 1-yard line. that changed the entire trajectory of the game. And albeit, we're playing against Kansas, not very many people gave us a shot to win anyway. That was back when Aqib Talib was on Kansas's team.
Okay.
And nobody really gave us a shot to win that game, but we were driving down the field, right? And similar situation with Georgia Southern here. Now, obviously, JMU's they're not Kansas, or at that time Kansas. However,
Right.
You get that kind of momentum and you're driving down the field like that. It's a real showstopper when you have a wide open touchdown and you just miss it. So yes, it certainly affects the psyche for the rest of the game. Hard to get it back too.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And you do not want to be chasing points against that James Madison team right now. Definitely not something you want to get into. This next clip comes from Marshall versus Georgia State. And this one was with Georgia State on offense going down. I set you running 2-minute drill as we had kind of talked about, and I'll run it back so you can talk about this one a little further too.
Yeah, I don't understand. So you've got man free, obviously, is what this looks like. Everybody's locked up, and you've got a free safety. He's covered the middle part of the field, basically playing a robber position. The amount of cushion that safety, I think either safety or nickel cornerback is given this slot receiver is insane. I mean, quarterback basically just has it's pitch and catch. It's 7-on-7 at this point, and he's in no position at all. He's backpedaling, already being 10 yards deep at the snap, and he's backpedaling. So, this had 6 written all over it. Great blocking upfield by a wide receiver, and it never stood a chance. I don't understand, and I think I told you this before we went on. I don't understand if you have a free safety that's robbing, why are you playing that deep? Look, that's 10 yards worth of cushion that he's already given up, and he backpedals 2 steps at the snap of the ball. So he's given up 12 yards before the ball's even snapped. So I just don't understand. I don't understand the psyche. I don't know what made him think that he could come up and make a play that quickly. But I would never have my corners or DBs in man coverage when I have a free robber giving up that much ground. It just looks crazy.
Yeah, definitely agree on that aspect. I was wondering how, you don't focus necessarily, at least as the outsider, I don't focus so much on what I see everywhere on the field before that play happens. You just focus that, hey, Georgia State has been trying to run the 2-minute offense. They played a few plays right there before that, and then they just went 74 yards in one play. You focus on the guy getting open for the touchdown, but to see it from the start and focus on it like that is definitely an interesting aspect. Obviously, that one's a little bit more evident than some others that happened, but interesting play call to be that far off defensively on that one. Speaking of defense, our last clip for this week comes from Troy versus Army. We know Troy took care of business very well in this one. This one is going to have Troy on defense, and we've got I think it's Jaborner here off the edge. Motion man comes, but no one touches him, TJ.
Yeah, he gets through. Jaborner gets through again. Really, I don't understand I don't know what this call was. I think maybe he might have been hot read and they were trying to get the ball out quick, but nobody touched him. Nobody chipped him. Nobody did anything. You've got down blocks which almost makes me think that it's a run pass option and the quarterback just chose wrong. Because there's no option outside. There's no option to throw the ball anywhere outside. You got soft cushion by your safety, but nobody is thinking that ball should be. It's a run play. You can tell by the receivers blocking. It's a run play. The quarterback completely ruined that play. Check your receivers down here at the bottom. They're going to block. So either everybody was wrong and the quarterback was right, or quarterback. I don't know. Maybe he's throwing the 32 again.
I was going to say he kind of leaks out there, and I don't know if that's just an open option because he knew he let that guy go without touching him, or if he was purposely supposed to receive the ball in this play. I guess I'd lean towards it because he does kind of turn before he really knows much. But honestly, once the quarterback releases it, it looks like he's actually trying to throw it more upfield
Right.
than
Yeah, it
232
didn't
in the
even
first
look like
place.
he was right. It didn't look like he was even throwing it to the running back or to the tight end or H back. Um, it just looked like and then whoever he thought he was throwing it to clearly did not know the ball was coming because they're blocking.
Yeah.
So I don't know what. I mean, that was a busted play from the word go. So, but excellent job by Troy's defensive end, and Troy really did a great job the entire game. Pitched a shutout. They look good on defense, which they have all year, and they have historically, or at least in the past several years, looked good on defense. But they really showed up against Army 19-0, and really represented the Sun Belt Conference well.
Absolutely. And this goes to prove and goes to show why Army does not throw the ball often.
Yeah, well, and they need to change that, man. Listen, this isn't high school anymore. You got to get more sophisticated in the way. And I get it. There's a way to do things, and we do it traditional way, and all. Some things have got to change, because that is not the answer.
No, you got to think that it would help recruiting. Although, I mean, what we know, the real reason that most of these guys go to the service academies is not for the sport they're playing, right? But
Right, exactly.
in general, you could get some better athletes if you ran a little bit more exciting style of football. Some guys who are on the cusp of saying, maybe I'll go to this school where I have to try a little harder to be in a certain position, or I could go to Army where they've kind of promised me that I'll be on the field right away.
Right.
But I don't really want to play that slow triple option style offense. So,
Right.
yeah, very interesting that, some of those things haven't changed much over the years. And I'm sure a lot of that's history and tradition being a strong indicator of what they're going to try and run. But hey, we've seen what it's done for Georgia Southern. And speaking of Georgia Southern, we will touch on that shellacking they took up there in Harrisonburg versus JMU. And, Bryn didn't have a good game. He wasn't completely awful.
No, it wasn't terrible.
Yeah, it's an indicator, like we were talking about earlier, more of James Madison's defense. That front seven, it's just, I mean, in general, they're good. Their secondary is very good.
I was going to say they're good at all three levels.
True. I think it's the front seven where you just focus because they are so strong. So that's where they have other teams get into trouble and everything else. Anything real specific stand out in this game, kind of besides the fact that they were just pretty much dominant from first whistle to the last one?
Yeah, no, they really were. Like I said, JMU's defense, they jumped out on them early, got them flustered. A couple bad throws by Bryn. A couple interceptions, not uncommon, right? We've seen him throw some interceptions in the past. He's got a habit of turning the ball over. I was very impressed with, I think his name's Surratt from JMU, their wide receiver. He had over 100 receiving yards on 5 catches. So it's big plays. He's averaging a first down every touch. So, I think that was awesome in terms of standing out. But yeah, they were just too much. They had too much for Georgia Southern. JMU is really good. Yeah,
they really are. I thought this might be the game that brings them back down to, I don't want to say normalcy. That's like a terrible way to describe what they've done so far.
A dose of reality.
Exactly. Yes. They're playing their first, we've talked about Virginia not being a strong opponent so far. So I thought this might be one of their first real strong opponents of the season as Georgia Southern comes in, at that time as a 4-1 record. And besides a bunch of turnovers that they probably shouldn't have had up in Wisconsin, been very competitive and very good in most of their games thus far this season. But man, you want to say a little bit was Georgia Southern didn't have their best game, but that's pretty obvious. But the other obvious thing about that is they didn't have their best game because JMU didn't allow them to. So it's not just that they played bad. It's that they weren't allowed to play good either. So you have to give full credit to the Dukes as they continue to roll on, now 6-0 on the young season. And that takes us to the other shellacking, which is great because the other team in this one wasn't in our conference anyway. So take it away, Troy. 19-0 shutout up there in West Point. The game was certainly closer last year when it was down in Troy, Alabama. But this year they had to travel up, play in some not great conditions. Probably why that 19 points is all Troy got, because they have been putting up a lot of points so far this year in most other games. But did you get the chance to see much of this one, TJ?
I saw a little bit of it. I was watching a couple different games, and I've my setup at home. I've got a
Yeah.
couple different TVs going. I've got different things happening. But I tell you what, I was impressed by Barber. 138 receiving yards. He didn't manage to get in the end zone. They didn't have to score a lot of points, but he was really, really big. Like I said, I mean, anytime you get receivers that have 4 and 5 catches and they're in triple digits, they're making those are called impact plays. Those are big game-changing, field-changing type of plays. And even if it results in 3 points, if your defense is doing as well as Troy's was, then sometimes that's all you need, right? Just to flip the field, just to get your kicker in good field goal. Now, obviously, you want those to turn into points, which I think Troy needed to do a better job of finishing. But Army's no slouch on defense either. So putting up 19 points is no small feat against Army. I just think Troy was too much for them defensively. And we talked about Army's offense. It's outdated. They need to, we need to do something a little different if we're Army. Again, I get it, tradition, all that sounds great, but if we're talking about winning and playing games that matter, it's time to revamp how we're doing things. Georgia Tech did it. So, and you see how well they're doing now.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you got to think that their fan base is not. I guess I would say they are diehard in the sense that like they'll always be Army, right? I mean,
and they have to be, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, that's just what you're ingrained with. But you would think there would be a lot more excitement when they go on the road to play people. They already kind of travel well, although I'm not going to really say that's travel because they just have so many people stationed around the country that. Right. In the Army or had someone that they know that was, and so that's why they show up so often. But you would think that would be multiplied if they can do something a little bit more exciting on the field. So, yeah, for Army, it is what it is. They look like they usually do, I guess, really. And Troy Troy looked fantastic. We had Vidal go back for over 100 yards, get back on pace there as one of the best running backs in the country. And then speaking of running yards, we had Georgia State running all over Marshall, 41-24. I mean, I knew that there would be, I knew there would be points in this one. I think we both had a feeling that there would be some points, but I thought this game would be closer. What were your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think Georgia State was too much too quick, right? I mean, you jump out to a 14-7 lead and then you score 13 unanswered points in the second quarter. That's a lot, that's doing a lot. And then you've got impact players going all over the field. Again, we talking about impact receivers. Williams had over, he had 129 yards, a touchdown on 6 catches. And you've got Carroll who's just toting the rock all over the place, 28 carries, 159 yards and a touchdown. That's a formula to win you football games, right? Obviously, there's some other players that showed up, but that's enough to get you a win. You've got your impact receiver, you got your impact running back. I mean, it's basically 30 carries on 160 yards. That will win football games. So, and that's what happened. And everybody took a turn for Georgia State on offense, making a play. Those are two highlighted because they led the game in yards, but Georgia State really had their way. And shout out to Sean Elliott and those guys down there. They're really turning that program around and doing a lot better than I predicted them to be doing this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're in Atlanta and you're a good football team, people will start showing up. It doesn't matter the level. You could be you could be a high school team down there in Atlanta. People will show up if you're winning on the field. So, as everyone says, winning cures everything. What also helps is that Granger didn't have actually a huge game passing statistically, right? 21 of 31, 234, just 1 touchdown. However, added 62 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. So again, pretty well-rounded game overall. Yeah, and like you said, the other 2 guys both running the rock and catching it downfield obviously helped him out tremendously as well. And Georgia State goes on to win a rather easy one over Marshall. I think Marshall fans are starting to sound a little bit like App State fans, to be totally honest with you, TJ. They're not so happy.
Yeah, well, it's frustrating, right? When you've got the team and the talent to win, and you come out and you put out performances like that. We've seen Marshall be great, And quite frankly, we've seen Marshall again, like last week, fall on their face, and you
Yeah.
don't know which team you're going to get, and it can get annoying. Trust me, as a black and gold fan, it certainly gets annoying.
Yeah, there's another black and gold team that we're going to talk about that is very annoyed and pissed off as well. We'll get to that one after this one, which was possibly the best game of the week. I would say you could certainly put up App State versus Coastal as the better overall game, but as far as finishes go, this one probably was a little bit more exciting than that one. We had Texas State coming from behind to beat ULM at home in a pretty raucous stadium down there in Texas, as Texas State was, trying to build some fan support and get everybody going to this game. It did not look like it was going to go their way to start the fourth quarter. All of a sudden, they were down 20-9 after a quick pick six. But then Texas State responds, comes back from behind, and takes this one in the end. Anything stand out to you? Probably mostly at the end there, TJ, but maybe just overall statistically that jumps out at you in this game.
Yeah, I mean, nothing great. Finley, I mean, 222 yards, not a whole lot. I mean, they've got, Davenport ran the ball fairly well, right? Almost 100 yards rushing. I don't think that any one thing stood out. I do think the key, or I guess if I'm going to sum this game up for Texas State in one word, is resilience, right? You get down that big, you got to find something. There's some fortitude, right? That you got to be able to pull from deep within, and got to say, hey, either, it's us or them at this point. And there's that no back down, gritting your teeth kind of deal. And they did it, and they came back and won. And I'm, hats off to them. Like I said, I mean, nobody had a breakaway outstanding game. I mean, some fairly decent stats. I think Hobart had 110 passing yards or receiving yards. I'm sorry, and 2 touchdowns. That's that'll work. But for the most part.
He's been the most consistent guy for them across the board, which is a little surprising to me because I thought Hawkins would come back in this year. I don't know if you remember this, but Hawkins had hit the transfer portal. And when Kinney was brought in as head coach, I don't know how he won him over, if it took a lot or just a little bit. He actually talked him into staying. And Hawkins is kind of that same mold of, who's the guy we just talked about like 2 games ago, wide receiver, smaller guy.
Barber?
Yes, Barber. Kind of that same mold, like smaller but shifty and very fast and elusive. That's kind of what Hawkins had brought to Texas State previously, and Hobart looks like now he's the guy there, which is a little surprising. But also in the same regard, Davenport having the bigger game was a surprise to me after what Mahdi's done. I think Mahdi's like a mid-season All-American right now with his statistics that he's put up and how he's looked on the field. And even if you don't, for whatever reason, don't have him up there as a running back, you better have him there as all-purpose, because he's doing it both carrying the rock and also doing it in the return game as well. He's already got a kick return touchdown on the season. So, yeah, I mean, the way this one went was the surprising part to me.
I was going to say, that shocked me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking just like, wow, I thought, we thought something specific about Texas State was just going to keep rolling to the next game and keep rolling in, and this one looked like it was not going to go their way until, well, it finally did there at the end. Like you said, that's that resiliency and just battling through it.
It takes some grit and it takes some fight, man. And sometimes you get your back against the wall, and you got to either come out. So it's 2 things that happen, right? You're down 20-9 in the fourth quarter. 2 things happen: either I find something somewhere, or I pack it in. And it's too much time left in the game to pack it in. If you're a true competitor, it'll come out of you. And like I said, Texas State should not have been down at all, in my opinion.
Right.
But it does tell you something about a team if they're able to grit and fight back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a team that didn't fight back last night's shellacking. Another shellacking. I think I already used that word. So, we'll just run it back up the flagpole a second time.
Right.
But holy cow. How much of this one did you watch? And if it wasn't much, I don't blame you, because it didn't seem to keep a lot of people interested for very long. It was a blowout well before halftime. So what'd you think of this game overall?
Yeah, I watched the first quarter and I thought, this could run away real quick. And then when I went back to, I can't remember. I went in the kitchen to do something, and I think it was like midway through or a couple minutes into the second quarter, and they scored again. And I was like, yeah, well, my wife wanted to watch a movie, so we decided to do that.
Right. Good idea. Good idea. Smart man.
Yeah, this was a runaway in all areas. I mean, Bradley had 319 passing yards. Over 100 rushing yards, over 100 receiving yard receiver. 4 touchdowns for Webb. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, so
insane.
I'm playing a little college fantasy football for I think the first time ever, and guess who started Webb this week? Thank you very much.
Look at you! Look at you!
I don't think anybody else even has to go the rest of the week. I probably already won the week with just his performance right there. What's funny about college fantasy football is like everybody has a great chance every single week because there's 100+ teams, so you always have somebody who's going to be available. Always somebody who's going to be hot. And then there's also the reverse of that, which is a superstar player who just has a down week. So like it doesn't matter what your rosters consist of. You can have a bunch of G5 players or P5 players, and it's a lot more fun, I'll say, than pro football, fantasy football, because it's the playing field has never been more level. If people are interested, there's plenty of places that are now running college fantasy football. I don't know. I just have a lot more fun with it because I feel like I stand a chance every single week because my roster can change drastically from one week to the next. So highly recommend for those that have ever thought about it or want to try it out with some friends or family. It's a good time. But yeah, I was recording with the Monarchist last night when TJ left me solo with the team here.
I was in bad shape, man.
Yeah, well, we still I took some notes. I asked TJ to share some thoughts and opinions so that we could put those on there, and I was sure to share his notes and thoughts and feelings on that. So if any of you are interested in ODU sports or athletics, the Monarchists put on one heck of a podcast, and obviously featuring there in the Norfolk area of ODU. They also do a lot of stuff around the community as well. If you give them a follow just to keep up with what they're doing and how they're doing it, an impressive group of guys, and we were happy to be invited on the show. Like we said, unfortunately, TJ probably thought better of it with how he felt and made the smart decision. But obviously, we were also disappointed that he couldn't be there for that recording. But if you're interested, go check it out. I still shared some of his thoughts in that podcast, and you can find that one in audio-only version pretty much anywhere you stream your podcast. That one, I believe, that one brings us to the end of kind of the recaps from mostly last week, obviously that weird Tuesday night game, but we also have a game Thursday night, tomorrow night, between James Madison and Marshall, and we will start to touch on some of those games right after our break from our presenting sponsor, Dano's Seasoning.
Yum, yum, get you some. Very good. Yum, yum, get you some.
Seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe,
hey.
We all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better. Try the new Dano's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
As mentioned.
As our guys.
Yeah, as mentioned, the Chipotle, I think that's probably my favorite. I won't lie. I think that one's it. They got a spicy one, which is obviously spicy. The Chipotle is a nice mix between spice and just flavor. I guess the spicy has definitely got a little bit more of a kick to it, but definitely recommend that Chipotle is probably my top option that I've had from them so far. So getting into tomorrow night's action first, James Madison, a perfect 6-0. Up against a Marshall team that's dropped their last 2 games here after starting the season 4-0. Now 4-2 coming into this one. JMU favored by maybe, I'm very surprised by this. Maybe you may not be. JMU favored by only 3.5 points, according to the odds makers, as this game will kick off at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. What do you find interesting about that spread, if anything, TJ? Maybe you agree with it. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just find it a little surprising.
I mean, based on the way JMU's play, you think the spread would be a little bit higher. I do think that I think they're giving Marshall some respect and calling last week kind of an aberration of what we've seen Marshall to be, right? Marshall is a good football team. They dropped one against NC State barely. We did not expect, Marshall to have as bad a game against Georgia State as they did.
Right.
It was what it was. These kinds of things happen. I think they're giving them their respect, but I feel kind of how you do. I think James Madison may run away with this, I think, by 10 plus. I mean, personally, I just think James Madison is just, they're obviously the best football team in Virginia right now.
Yes.
And I just think that they're too good on defense at every single level. Every guy plays their position. They do their job, in the words of Bill Belichick, and they don't turn the ball over, right? When you've got your defense playing hard, you can rush the passer with 4, right? You can drop 8 or 7 in coverage, and you don't turn the ball over. That's a recipe for winning every week.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done every week. They're 6-0, 3-0 in conference. So I don't see this week being any different. They're strong up front. And we've only talked about their defense. Their offensive line is super prolific. They're running the ball anytime they want to. So and they've got 6'3", 6'4" guys that play receiver on the edge. They're really good everywhere. And I think their day is coming. I hate that they're not going to be bowl eligible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely disappointing. Like you said, 3-0 in conference already, and it doesn't matter what they do from here, unfortunately for them. I think I just saw a tweet before we started tonight, like an hour or two ago, that said that they either reapplied or tried to do some other waiver to become postseason eligible. Already denied.
It's so messed up, man.
Yeah.
They should, because they're really good, and this could be great. It could be great for the conference, which obviously you and I were going to support the Sun Belt no matter what. So it's kind of selfish of us to want that to happen, but also secondarily, just for James Madison as a university, they deserve this. They're really, really good, and this type of success is not something that you can count on being replicated, right? You get these years like this, and you want to bottle it up. I know, again, going back to my playing days, we were blessed to have Richie Williams, and then that transitioned right into Armani Edwards. And so we kind of caught lightning in the bottle for like 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
You don't get that very often. And when you have it, you want to be able to take advantage of it. And I think it's just a shame that JMU can't this year.
Yeah, especially since, like, just as you touched on with the quarterbacks, they transition from one to the other as well. And that's I actually talked to the guys on the Monarchist about this last night. It was surprising to me, as I thought, like, there's no way they hit 2 transfer guys in a row and have the same success. And it's not going to happen. And lo and behold, there's like no drop off, next to no drop off. And even if there has been a little bit of a drop off, there's been improvement on the other side. I was
going to say the other side of the ball makes up for it.
Yes. So, I think we can both agree that as good as JMU was last year, I don't think their defense was as good as it is this year. So, even if the offense isn't quite as there, which statistically it's probably pretty damn close, even if it's not exactly the same. Maybe it's even better statistically. I haven't compared directly, but just from an eye test perspective, I thought the quarterback play at JMU, it was at least more fun to watch last year. And, but again, because you're being successful, you don't have to do the fun stuff and the crazy stuff with the scrambling and getting downfield, like they had. And I'm going blank on his name, but like they had last year at the quarterback position. Obviously, this guy looks like McLeod could just sit in the pocket a little bit longer and just
they're playing on schedule.
Yeah. Yep. So not a lot of craziness needed, and that bodes well for them. As far as a team that looking to rebound from that game, we've got Monroe, who's 2-4 now, coming up against Georgia Southern, who's 4-2. That one a 2:00 kick on ESPN2. As we roll through some highlights from that Texas State ULM game we talked about earlier, actually mostly just focusing on the end of this game here, but What do you think? So ULM has kind of surprised, I think, the both of us with not necessarily their win total. I don't think the 2-4 record shocks us in any way, but maybe how they've gotten there certainly has surprised me. What do you think about this game going in, especially after what Georgia Southern had done or had seen last week from James Madison?
Yeah, I mean, if you're ULM, I mean, coming off two heartbreaking losses this year, one to App State and then one last week. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of want to have. I know I've said it a couple times this year, a get right game, and I don't know how right you can get if you're ULM, right? I mean, you're not top or cream of the crop, so to speak. However, you've
Right.
showed flashes of being very good. You know, your record being 0-3 in conference is not indicative of who you or what the way you've played, right? You've played teams tough. You just lost some close ones in the end, and it happens, right?
Right.
Georgia Southern does not, you know, it's funny because we talked about the spread with James Madison and Marshall being 3.5, and then now you've got Georgia Southern at a 17-point favorite. And I got to be honest with you, based on the way ULM's played over the past few weeks, I don't see there being a 17-point spread. And I could
Yes.
be wrong. You know, the game's in Statesboro, so that makes a difference. It
Yep.
is a little bit warm, but again, Louisiana is not cold, so
Right.
you know, I just 17 points just seems like a lot, you know,
I agree with
depending on
you.
the ULM team that you get. So you want to get right if you're ULM. I'll tell you this, I don't have ULM winning this. I just don't see it being a 17-point spread.
I think I can fully agree with you on that one. ULM doesn't jump out at you defensively, but I mean, look what they just did against a Texas State offense that put up all kinds of points against Baylor previously. I mean, Texas State offense has been mostly consistent and certainly has a lot of weapons with a lot of speed at every position on the field, including the quarterback position, right? I mean, we know TJ Finley, it's not really known as a scrambler, but he can run.
He can run,
and,
yep.
and he's a big guy too. He's like Cam Newton when he's running with the ball. You're not going to just tackle that dude easy. He ain't
Right.
sliding down too often, I don't think.
No.
But I mean, this ULM team is just fighting all season long. They probably should have beat our App State Mountaineers in
Yeah.
that one. We escaped with one hell of a long field goal. They could have very easily won this game versus Texas State. And I mean, what was the game just the other week that they were in as well that kind of surprised me? So, yeah, I don't know how they put a 17-point spread on this one. I mean, we know Georgia Southern can score the football with that new spread option or air raid attack that Helton has
Right.
brought to them there, but they were shut down last week, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of get them back rolling. I could see them putting up more points than last week, but it's not hard to do when you only
Sure.
scored 13 and they only had one of those touchdowns. So
Right. Right.
I just think that this one's a little bit surprising in that regard, maybe. But I guess ultimately we'll see. Early afternoon kick, and should be, I think, yet again another good one there down there in Statesboro, as you said. Next up, we've got Coastal Carolina versus Arkansas State. That one in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So Coastal beats App State this past week. Well, I guess it was a week and a half ago now at this point, or whatever it was.
Weird Tuesday. But.
Yeah, the Tuesday games, man, I'm okay with some Thursdays. Even Wednesdays, like kind of okay, just because it feels like at that point, when by Wednesday night when a game is played, you're over halfway through the week. It kind of feels like okay,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Tuesday's
Well, Tuesday just feels
weird.
it feels weird because it's like part of me is like I want to drink a beer while I'm watching this game, but then there's part of me is like it's Tuesday, bro. What are you doing?
I can tell you, having been in Boone for this game, there was still a lot of beer drinking being done.
I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was.
I don't know how many people can afford to take off a Wednesday at work, but it seemed like there were some people that were going to have to after what I saw from some of the ones in the crowd. But hey, I mean, packed house Tuesday night. That's not easy to be done by anybody in the country, let alone a G5 team in little old Boone, North Carolina. So again, A+ to our fan base overall for coming out and packing the house like that on a Tuesday.
Good.
Unfortunately, they let them down because Coastal took advantage. After suffering 2 losses to start the conference play. They got a big rebound win. Now we see Jalen Rayner and Arkansas State, after they've had essentially a bye week at this point. Coastal, 10-point favorite. Do you expect it to maybe the opposite of the other game, where you expect it to be a little more in this one, actually? Or is that pretty fair with how Coastal was before this big outburst finally came here against App State last week?
Yeah, I think they're on par with that. I think you get up for certain teams, right? And they got up for App State. There's some history there, obviously, going back to some years prior. I don't think they go out and beat the snot out of Arkansas State. They will win. I do think that they'll win. I think 10 points is fair, but I don't think that they come out and do an offensive explosion the way that they did against us. I think they just got up for us, right? And that happens.
Right.
We should have been up. I say we, App State should have been up for them as well. However, it's in the past. I don't want to get mad all over again. I'm not going to do that to myself. But that you have those kinds of games, right? You have those kinds of games where there's an opponent that you just really, really despise, and you play your tail off. It doesn't mean that you won't play well against Arkansas State. I just don't see it being the first quarter dominance that it was in Boone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe if Arkansas State was coming off like 3 straight games and they were beat up, maybe you think like that's when Coastal jumps on them, right? They've got the fresh legs. They feel confident and comfortable after this big win. But that's kind of the opposite of what we're seeing here. We're likely seeing a pretty well-rested Arkansas State team who's watched a lot of film here recently to correct the wrongs and improve their game a lot more, with a quarterback who has had some youth and inexperience, but has come along pretty well until he's played some of the better defenses. Coastal Carolina's not necessarily one of the better defenses here in the conference as of yet. Obviously put up just enough to take care of App State, but I mean, they didn't blow me away defensively with what they were doing. They still allowed big gashes. Obviously that last play right there that we've just seen here on film now, and obviously the one for Tucker that was gonna put App State into at least field goal position, if not a very likely touchdown after how that drive started until that fumble came. But yeah, I think this is a close game too. I don't know about 10 points. I mean, as far as a betting odd is concerned, I can understand why they keep it kind of realistic there to kind of get some interest in the betting lines. But I'm taking Coastal by probably just more than 10, but not a lot more. Probably more like 13 or
14. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, something like that, but not a lot more, just because I think, like I said, Arkansas State having some time off to kind of recuperate and fix some stuff, I think that's going to play to their advantage. Also, being at home there in Jonesboro, with what essentially is going to be a big brand and big team coming in, for them to try and take advantage of and get a win over after a little bit of a disappointing start to the season. We can just stay right on these highlights here. It's our next game up. Well, really at the same time on NFL Network is App State taking on Old Dominion. Both teams 3-3 coming into this one. App favored by 6.5 points right now. Do you think that's fair? Do you think what we've seen here on film plays a role into some certain aspect where they, do something miraculous and like have a shutout, or like, keep ODU really off the scoreboard, or what do you think might happen in this one?
I'm definitely not calling for a shutout. I do think you would hope, right? You would hope, and this is maybe the former player in me, or still maybe partially wants to be a player in me, saying that when you come off a loss the way that you came off of one, that a part of you is like, what the hell with this? Let's put this team away. Let's get them out of here early. They don't belong on the field with us. We say that. ODU has been playing great throughout the season. However, from a talent perspective, anyone in their right mind knows that, we're a little bit more talented than they are. That said, talent doesn't matter when you're not executing properly. And also, we've got to get to a space where our coach is calling plays that put us in positions to win games, not just be in them. Right?
Yes.
We're playing too conservative. I mean, running the ball on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 is insane to me. It drives me up the wall. First down, zone read left, zone read right. And I'm like, Coach, come on, man. I get it. You're an offensive line guy. You want to dominate the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
However, we've got dogs out there that can catch the ball. We've got some route runners. Strowman's great on the outside. We've got plenty of guys that can really, really fly down the field. And we've got some running backs that we can use in the pass game.
Yes.
So we need to do that. And we need to make our offense. And again, it's probably too far down the line to start getting crazy exotic with how we switch things up. But some variations in the way that we do the things that we do, I think can definitely help us move. Right now, we're super predictable. I mean, we're the Dallas Cowboys right now. Run the ball on first and second down.
How do you know that so well, TJ? How do you know that they look a lot like the Dallas Cowboys?
I only watch every game. No big deal, right? It's like it's crazy. I'm watching my two favorite teams, Cowboys and App State. They're both playing the exact same brand of football. Yeah. Not to get too far off topic, but I'm watching the game against the Chargers on Monday night, and there's 8 seconds to go with 2 timeouts, and we don't stop the clock to try and pitch a ball in the end zone. And we're in the, inside the 20-yard line. What is Mike McCarthy doing? It's the same sentiment that I feel here. It's like, I don't understand what Sean Clark does sometimes when we have these kinds of games. It's call the plays that are going to win you the game, not just have you in the game, because having you in the game will make you lose. So anyway, I'm going to get off that soapbox, but we've got to find a way to be more productive offensively and limit the big plays defensively.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And as we kind of covered on the Monarchist show, it's funny that you mentioned Strowman. That was the name I pulled out first from the wide receiver core as well. Not that he's the leading receiver, because he's not. But
I think talent-wise, he's, you know what I mean?
Yes, and I think you even had mentioned it when you mentioned his name, is like, when you need a play, he's kind of that guy. I mean, we saw at UNC. I mentioned the exact play. I think it was a 4th down. If it wasn't a 4th down, it was a long 3rd down. But it was the play. It looked like it was honestly, frankly, going over his head. And I guess 6'4", 6'5", whatever he is, he reaches over and makes that miraculous grab. And yeah, I mean, I actually said on the podcast last night that the bread and butter of App State has always kind of been the running backs, right? They've always had talent, and a number of them, and you could trust them easily. And I don't have distrust in them. Okay, I won't say that. But Nate Noel going down last week, you don't even know who's kind of going to be the starter going into this one. But more than one guy's going to touch the ball anyway. So I actually said last night that I think this is one of the most trustworthy wide receiver cores we've had in a while.
Right. Agreed. And we're not trusting them.
Right. And like when Aguilar's throwing passes downfield, it's not like I used to be where I'm like, I hope they make the catch. I'm expecting them to make the catch. And you know this too. There's been times where Aguilar's made the throw properly, but the wide receiver has dropped the pass. So it's not that they've been perfect, but I still expect them to make the play more often than I don't, which has not always been the case. Back when you guys played, I obviously expected that type of thing too, because you had 2 hell of a good quarterbacks throwing you guys the ball. And I think Aguilar's not quite in that class, but he's definitely up there with recent quarterbacks with where he places the ball for these guys to make the plays. So yeah, I'd love to see them make some better adjustments and show us something, come alive. Although I think I predicted like a 36-31 score, because like you said, defensively, I hope they come out and shock me. I said they have to come out and pound them into submission early defensively if they want to have like some jump on this game and really dominate. I don't know if we'll see that, but that's my hope. So anyway, that will wrap up for the long one. Then we finish up with a Georgia State versus Louisiana matchup at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. The Cajuns favored by 3 in this one. We just keep I keep feeling like I'm surprised by some of these spreads. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Cajuns favored by 3. I don't know how to feel, because Georgia State's coming off a really, really good win against Marshall, and Marshall's a good football team. Granger, I know we bring his name up every single week, but it seems like every week he's making a play. And I just think he's quality. He's very, very quality. He's put on some weight since last year, and he's really kind of taking control and command of that offense. but I don't know. Louisiana they're good too. So I think the spread is offering respect to both sides, right? I think what they're doing is giving Georgia State, based on what they did against Marshall, the respect that they deserve. However, I do think that Marshall game for Marshall was an aberration. I don't think Georgia State winning was as much as a surprise as it was the way they won, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like anybody can beat anybody, but the way they came out and just completely dominated from start to finish, I think that is what shocked everybody. And I think that's where Georgia State's getting the respect, and rightfully so. They're 5-1, 2-1 in conference, so they deserve the respect. But you can flip a coin. You can flip a coin this week. I'm not gonna pick this one. Well, actually, yeah. Well, I'm gonna pick with my heart. I'm gonna go Georgia State. Let's go Panthers.
Yeah. I don't know. At this point, with what history has shown me, I'm gonna stick with the Cajuns.
Okay.
Neither team has kind of blown me away with anything thus far. Georgia State, like I said before in a previous show, I expected them to be kind of at this level last year.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to finally put it together isn't totally a shock to me, but defense has to be a little bit better for me to like really and fully trust them. Like at this point, I would agree with where the standings are that JMU is a different class than them at this point.
Sure.
So I'm not quite, that high on Georgia State, even though they are very impressive from a conference standpoint overall. As far as the Cajuns are concerned, there's just something about them when they're up against the wall. They usually perform pretty well.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think they're up against a wall quite yet because that West Division is still wide open compared to the East, which I guess technically the East is wide open since JMU is ineligible.
Right. Well, yeah.
But yeah, if it wasn't for that, I have a question that I've saved up for you that I'll surprise you with here in a minute. It'll be an easy one for you to answer. Don't worry about it. Don't get nervous, TJ. Don't let me get you nervous. But so yeah, I think ultimately I trust the Cajuns to get the game done since it's there at home. But I mean, I think Georgia State has the offense to take total control if they can score, just as we've seen last week with a couple scores by a couple different teams. If they get out to an early lead and the Cajuns are chasing the entire time, that doesn't bode well for that Cajuns offense. And Georgia State could definitely take that at that point. But if they start off struggling a little bit on the road for a long travel trip, I can see the Cajuns taking advantage and jumping out to a lead themselves, or at least establishing enough of a presence with some field goals and long sustained drives to kind of take Georgia State out of it a little bit and beat down that defense to try and get the W ultimately at home. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with a very small spread either direction. Honestly, it wouldn't have surprised me if they said Georgia State was favored by 3. But
yeah, I was going to say I'm not shocked. I'm not going to be shocked with whoever wins this game. And the over/under is high too, 30 points each team. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think, you and I both said we checked out some of the Cajuns game against the Gophers up there in Minnesota. It was a pretty impressive showing overall.
Absolutely, it was.
Yeah, they come in with 2 losses, but I mean, it's not like they're 2 bad losses. So
I was going to say they didn't lose the scrubs. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. So that will do it for what we've got coming up. But I do want to have a question for you, and I'm going to bring up the standings as I say this now. So if you want to take a look at the standings as I pose this question, so you're ultimately prepared for this crazy off the wall question. It's not crazy or off the wall at all. So across the board in college football, the theme or change that seems to be coming to help most of these conferences, and most of them have been some of the conferences that have been kept out of the college football playoff. So I'm talking across the board, but I am including the Sun Belt in this as well.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on getting rid of divisions? So ultimately at the end of the year, you have the 2 best teams matching up in a conference championship game versus an East-West setup as we currently have in the Sun Belt. And the reason I'm going to ask that, to give you a little bit further time to think, is maybe this year is a little different because James Madison will ultimately be out. So even if they're undefeated, it doesn't play a factor. But let's just say that anybody in the East is undefeated and that undefeated team, beat the other team in the East to only have one. So I'll just use, just as an example, I'll just use the top two teams right now. So James Madison stays undefeated, and Georgia
Right.
State only loss in the conference or only loss all season comes to James Madison. Meanwhile, in the West, everyone's got 2 losses or more. And now we're looking at a situation maybe where you're looking at a New Year's Six possibility for JMU if they stay undefeated. So they
Right.
have to win, right? But now JMU, when they're battling other teams that are also possibly undefeated or a one-loss team to, a highly ranked team, so they're kind of neck and neck considered for whatever reason. Now they're playing a 2-loss team in a championship game. They're not going to gain ground, whereas they played that one-loss team a second time. What are your thoughts on that? I'm talking too long now.
Yeah, no. I like it. I like the idea of letting the best teams line up and play. Right. I've always been a proponent of letting the guys, letting the players on the field determine who gets what. And, I know that I think the ACC is divided up the same way. The SEC East almost never gets, outside of maybe Georgia, sometimes Florida, Tennessee is spotty here every now and again, but they almost never get love because there's no Alabama, there's no LSU, there's no Mississippi State, over there. So, in my opinion, I think like you, let the best two teams, and if we get a repeat, then we get a repeat. It just is what
Right.
it is. Everybody deserves a mulligan. It's hard to beat a good team twice, right? So I think we benefit from finding out who the true winner of that conference is. Because another thing that can happen when you have a 2-loss team playing a 1-loss team is the 2-loss team has really not a whole lot to lose. Because even if they win and they're that conference champion, they know that they don't have a chance in hell at going to a college football playoff with 2 losses.
Or New Year's Six in all likelihood at this
or
point.
New Year's Six in all likelihood.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things to me where I think we benefit as a whole from college football by just lining the boys up and letting them play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is my argument as well, because and by the way, ACC this year has no divisions. So they've already gone to this. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting because of how it could play out with UNC and Florida State.
I was just getting ready to say Carolina and Florida State. That could be very interesting.
Yeah, because they do not line up against each other in the regular season. So in that regard, there'll be no rematch possible. So it could be 2 undefeated teams at that point, which would be one hell of an ACC championship.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, we might have to make a trek to Charlotte for that one for some special coverage.
I wouldn't be mad about
it. I'll be cheering for Florida State, but
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest argument is if you want your conference to go to the next level, you have to start making New Year's Six. I thought this would be the year that Sunbelt would do it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's already a little bit more unlikely with what we've got out there in some other teams in the G5, looking the way they do.
And that's why
currently.
I'm mad about James Madison, because I personally think James Madison is as good or better than Tulane.
Yes.
So I don't see, I mean, and Tulane will probably end up getting that New Year's Six Bowl. Usually it's the Cotton Bowl that they let a G5 school play a P5. However, I think James Madison will put up a better fight than Tulane would.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they'd be, even if they don't win it, like you said, I mean, it's going to be a game. No one should question that at this point. Well, I don't care whether you love or hate JMU. They're going to be in every football game they play. I mean, maybe sans 2 or 3 teams at the top of college football right now. I think they'd even compete with, a USC after what they went through. They faced a pretty good Notre Dame defense.
Up front.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Think about not to cut you off, I apologize, but think about App State versus Penn State a couple years back, App State and Tennessee a couple years back. I mean, we've had some G5 success, right?
Yes.
We didn't necessarily win those games, but you didn't walk away from your television thinking, damn, that App State team sucked. And I feel like that would be the same sentiment being shared about JMU, because I think they're that good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where you think about what we're trying to do, right? We're covering the Sun Belt because we think it can get to a certain level, and there's an
Right.
excitement and people that care. How do you do that? You harp on and you focus on the stuff that's brought you the success. Last year, it was the week where App State took down Texas A&M, and Marshall took down Notre Dame, and Georgia Southern beat Nebraska, all on the same weekend, right?
Right.
The next logical step in that is to get one of these teams. It doesn't have to be one of those three, but one of these teams from the conference to a New Year's Six bowl, put them on the largest stage, the grandest stage
let
that
'em
you
play.
could be, and let them play and show people how strong. Because no matter how much we hark on it, there's still a lot of people out there that think that the Sun Belt is not now the premier G5 conference out there, and I
Right.
think it is. I think it easily became that
Without a
last year
doubt.
when they added these teams. That week helped prove it right then and there. And now we're seeing, and I'm talking top to bottom, right? We just talked about this. Arkansas State, maybe, you know, a little bit further down. Southern Miss is just shockingly down this year. But
Right.
a team that has routinely been down in ULM is competing in every single game still. I
Every
mean,
game. Yep.
sans the Alabama or whoever they got trounced by at the P5 level. But
Oh yeah. I can't remember.
yeah, it's
But
like
yeah, I get your point. It's
one of
valid.
the SEC teams that they played.
Right.
It might have been Texas A&M actually. I think it was Texas A&M actually.
Okay.
So sans that type of game in conference, they are competing with just about everybody they've played so far. So you're looking at like one or two teams that are kind of weaker at the bottom. I mean, go and compare that to some of the other conferences right now. It feels like they have a lot more of those really bad teams, especially with what the American has brought in, what Conference USA was forced to bring in to replace some of those teams that left for the American, bringing up a bunch of FCS teams. Jacksonville State looks pretty good actually so far. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hate on them. They've been very impressive to me.
Absolutely.
But then you look at a team like kind of Sam Houston State, and they're, I believe, still winless at this point. They've been in some games to their credit, and they are jumping up from the FCS to the FBS in their first level. But we're kind of past that phase now. I mean, James Madison was the only team that was left to do that, and they look like the best damn team in the conference. So,
Right.
I mean,
right.
I don't know. As much as I dislike JMU and the Dukes overall for
Sure.
past history and the fact that they wear purple, I have to give credit where credit is due and say I am disappointed that they're not possibly eligible for something, because as much as everyone hates to admit this, them being good and showing the rest of the country how good they are still helps all the rest of the teams. Especially
It's the big picture. It's the big picture.
It doesn't matter. Again, who doesn't matter who makes the New Year's Six. I mean, at the time, I know there's going to be thoughts and feelings on it, but overall, you want that money.
Yeah.
The entire conference gets a cut of that bowl check.
Mhm.
Just like the entire conference gets a cut of Louisiana going to college March Madness last year, right? It doesn't matter who goes ultimately. You need to keep putting
we just
people.
we need to be represented, and we're
Yes.
too good of a conference and have too much talent to not be represented.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I'm glad we shared that thought. Is there anything else before we say adieu and let you get back to recovery for this cold that you got there?
No, I do want to give a big shout out, as much as you hate them, to Carolina. The Tar Heels are, I mean, they proved me. Listen, I'll say it this way: in years past, Carolina has found a way to blow it.
Yep.
To date, they have not. They've looked like a quality football team. Not just a quality. They look like a really good football team the entire year. What they did to Miami, they beat them soundly. Right?
They did.
There was no question who the superior team was. They can run the ball. They can throw it. They can dominate on defense. They are a really good football team. And I want to give a big shout out to Carolina and all my Carolina fans out there. I tell you what, Colorado better step it up, because they had me up late the other night on last Friday night doing nonsense, watching them get blow a 29-point lead. I don't even know what that's about. But
Not sure.
Apart from that, they've got. I think Colorado has a bye week this week, so hopefully nobody does anything stupid. Everybody can come back intact and get their heads back on straight and really finish out the rest of the season the right way. So, but yeah, that's it. That's all I had.
Nice, very nice. I won't necessarily echo your sentiments on UNC because I am a hater, but I will agree that I mean they've earned the respect. I mean
Sure.
for years and years and years and years they put many players into the NFL and had many extremely talented players, but they never seemed to have great teams
Yeah.
overall. And it does
Exactly.
seem like this year, for whatever reason, uh, they finally got that full team aspect, and they
Putting
do
it
look
together.
impressive, which makes me feel good about App State's loss overall. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
they lost to a middling UNC team that we've seen in the past. So
Right.
yeah, that's one that ultimately too at this point, like man, if we had won that one, like think about
Oh,
how everyone feels about the season had that game gone differently.
right.
Even with some of these losses, I think everyone feels different, right? The Sean Clark stuff doesn't get as loud or as vocal.
Right.
And yeah, you're still disappointed in a loss to Coastal, but if you had beaten a ranked team and a team that was otherwise undefeated, I mean, you're not going to be hearing the fan base like we do now. So
Sure.
that's pretty unfortunate.
100%. And that's me included in that fan base.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I talked about last night. Like I'm not quite as crazy about it because, like we've mentioned, like the games have been close. It's not like we're getting blown out. It's not like he's
Sure.
totally lost all control here. It's little things that could be corrected and changed. Whether it's the players on the field not having lapses in certain times, whether it's just slight changes of the play calling, or expanding the playbook. I mean that. I know those ultimately aren't the easiest, but I mean, as far as the scheme of things, it's not like you got to go out and recruit all this new talent. The talent seems to
Right.
be there.
We have the
So
talent.
yeah, and there's quite a few teams in the Sun Belt really that have some talent. I mean, we just talked about ODU. They've got one of the best linebackers in all of college football, Jason Henderson. We touched on
Mhm.
this last night. He's got 92 or 93 total tackles on the season
Insane.
already.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah. So for App State fans and everyone going to be watching that game on Saturday night on the NFL Network, you won't have to look hard to find that guy. Trust me, he'll be noticeable.
He'll be
Hey,
around.
you know who? I mean, obviously a different position, but he kind of reminds me of the fact of like Corey Lynch.
Yeah.
Corey Lynch was
Mhm.
not the
Oh,
fastest or biggest guy on the field, but it's like his mind worked before the play even happened. About like as soon as something was starting to happen,
mhm.
he was reading it before the rest of the defense somehow, and that just
Yeah.
seems how Henderson plays the game too. So absolutely incredible. But I guess at that point that'll wrap it up. TJ, where can people find you and follow you on the social medias?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook at just my name, TJ Corman, exactly how it's written on the screen. Instagram at Mr. Corman12, and also you can find my food page at Thick Thighs and Large Fries.
Very nice.
Barbecue, BBQ.
BBQ, real barbecue,
Yeah,
real
yeah, it's
barbecue.
real. It's real barbecue.
Yes.
My pulled pork actually pulls.
There you go. That's important. It's all in the name, baby. Oh man. Well, you could follow the both of us and see what we post on the socials at Sunbelt Syndicate, pretty much across all platforms. Twitter's without the E because it's too long of a name. But we'll have some fun stuff and keep the coverage coming for you guys. Thank you for watching and tuning in, and we will see you guys all next time.